and welcome to the 2500 series video. I'm Jordan Rudis. The purpose of this video is to give you a basic overview of your new instrument and get you up and running quickly. We'll cover some basic programming tips, create a sequence, and look at all the major operational areas. This video is not intended to be a substitute for your manual. In fact, you may find it helpful to pause this video and refer to your manual as you watch. You'll also find it helpful to watch the video while you're sitting next to your 2500, so you can follow along on your own instrument. This video has been broken up into sections. To help you find these various sections, a number will be displayed in the upper left-hand corner, so you can fast forward to the areas that most interest you. These numbers correspond with the chapter titles printed on the video box. Don't be afraid to push any buttons on the instrument. You can't break anything. Let's get started. First, we'll give you a quick overview of the instrument. Looking at the front panel, you'll notice that it's divided into sections. On the left and along the bottom is a row of 8 buttons. Pressing these buttons takes you to the 2500's 8 operational modes. The names of the modes are printed in white under the display. Underneath this, you'll notice that the buttons also have a green label, and some of the buttons have a yellow label. While you're editing a program and are in the program editor, then the green labels apply to these buttons. We'll be showing some examples of this later. When you're editing a sample within the sample editor, the yellow labels apply. Above these buttons is another row of 8 buttons. The edit and exit buttons are used to enter and exit the various editors found in the different modes. The middle 6 buttons are called soft buttons because their function changes according to where you are in the software menus. You will notice 6 blocks at the bottom of the display. The blocks change names in relation to the function displayed on the screen. For instance, when you first turn on the 2500, you're in the program mode, and the soft buttons are used to transpose by octave, change MIDI channels, and change the way programs are displayed, or send a MIDI all notes off message. If you have a rack version of the 2500 and just tried pressing these buttons, you may have noticed that pressing the octave plus and minus buttons had no effect. Don't worry, this is normal. We'll explain about this in just a moment. To the left of the display are the channel bank buttons. These buttons also have different functions depending on which mode you're in. In program and several other modes, they will switch you through the 16 MIDI channels. In quick access mode, they switch to the different quick access banks. In the song mode, they switch record tracks. And if you're editing programs or setups, then the green label under the button applies, switching you through layers in a program or zones in a setup. To the right of the display are buttons used for navigating and data entry. The 4 arrow buttons move the cursor around in the various edit screens and also scroll through programs and setups when in those modes. The wheel and the plus and minus buttons are used to scroll through the values of the various parameters, and the numeric keypad is used to directly enter specific values. Finally, we come to the sample input section. If you don't have the sampling option, there will be a blank panel instead of jacks. We will not be covering sampling in this video, so refer to the chapter on sampling in your manual for information on this. On the back panel, you'll find the typical power, MIDI, SCSI, and audio connections, along with the KDS port, which is used to connect the optional DMT interface using Kurzweil's proprietary digital format. If you have the sampling option, you will also see digital input and output connectors. Let's take a moment to talk about the audio outs. You'll see there are 10 configured as pairs labeled mix, A, B, C, and D. It's important to understand that even though there are 10 jacks, there are only 8 routable outs. Here's the way it works. When you route a signal, you choose the A, B, C, or D pairs and the appropriate panning position. But all audio signals come out of the mix pair until you physically plug a cable into a separate out. At that point, any signal routed to that out is removed from the mix and comes out of that particular output. So if you plug cables into all of the separate outs, there will be no signal coming from the mix outs. To route something through the standard effects processor in your 2500, you need to set the output to A, but the effects actually only come out of the mix outs. So if you plug cables into the A outs, then you will not be able to use the effects. For this reason, a typical way that the users would wire their units is to plug into the mix B, C, and D pair. We should mention that this method of using the effects applies only to the standard effects processor. If you add the KD effects option, you can route effects to any output. The separate outs can also be used as insert points for external instruments, or to route a 2500 signal to an external effects processor and back into the instrument. For more on this, please consult your manual. When you first turn your unit on, you may want to change the display contrast. There are two ways to do this. The first way is to hold down the Enter button. While holding it down, move the wheel. This method is temporary. Your 2500 will revert to its previous setting the next time you power up. The second method is to go to the master mode and use the cursor buttons to bring you to where it says contrast and move the wheel once again. As you scroll it, you'll see the contrast changing.